Hey there, friends. My name's Mark. This is Bumbling Through Dungeons, where we may or may not talk about dungeons and/or dragons. And today's topic is the fun of the absurd. And this is one that I have a lot of fun with in-game, and I think is going to be a lot of fun to talk about. So let's get into it. So one of the things that's really fun about D&D, and really any RPG or any game where you get to progress as a character, is improving at things and feeling like there is a tangible sense of improvement. So you can definitely from level 1 to level 5, even level 1 to level 2, but certainly in the aggregate, you can see and feel your character improving, getting better at things. And depending on what your specialty is, you can get better and better and better and better and better at certain particular skills. And this can be a lot of fun knowing that if you are the specialist in Arcana, that when something comes up that involves it, when a problem can be solved with arcane knowledge, that you're going to be the one to go to. That can feel very satisfying. And that's one of the big appeals of games where you have tangible progression, tangible and regular progression, whether it's on a leveling system or a point-based system or, one of the many others that exist out there in things like video games or RPGs. It can feel very satisfying to feel that sense of accomplishment that comes with progressing a character. And one of the quirks of D&D is that you can specialize in certain skills and certain abilities sometimes to such an absurd extent that it's really not in your interest to continue to improve those skills. And what I mean by this is that once you get to about 20 plus consistently on rolls, and there are definitely certain classes and archetypes and character builds that you can create where it's almost impossible for you to roll below a 20 on certain skills. Once you get to the point where you're rolling 20 or above 90 to 95% of the time, any skills that you take to improve that ability are going to have a diminishing return. Because most of the time, if you're rolling 20 or above on a certain skill check, you're going to pass the skill check. Like, you don't usually need to roll anything higher than that. Now, there are some saving throws, there are some skill checks that can get as high as about 30, but those are exceedingly rare. I think if you're in a high-level campaign, once you get to like beyond level 10, you might see a lot more DCs above 20. So at that point, there might be a purpose to getting to 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. But when I talk about absurdly improving skills, I'm talking about, rogues who can roll stealth rolls in the 40s on a regular basis. And in no world do you need to roll 40 plus on stealth. There's no stealth check that is going to require a 43 in order to pass it. Or if there is, I really want to see what that particular circumstance is. It's probably some villain with a perception of like plus 22 or something fun like that. But again, those are going to be so rare as to be negligible in a campaign. Once you get to, if not 20, at least like 25 plus most of the time, there's a diminishing return on improving those skills. And yet so many players do it. Why is that? And I think it comes down to certain mentalities. And if you're really trying to optimize, min-max or optimize or get the absolute most out of your character, you'd get a particular skill to the point where you're consistently rolling at or above 20, and then you would ignore it and you would start to work on improving other skills. Because taking a particular skill on average from 20 to 25 is not going to be as important as taking another one from 10 to 15 on average. You're going to make a lot more successful rolls going from 10 to 15 than you will from 20 to 25, where you're probably going to succeed regardless of which of those two it is. But you'll see people eschew that mentality and continue pumping up those one or two abilities to see how high they can get them. And I think this is really fun. I'm not going to say this is bad at all. I absolutely do this as well with my characters because I think there is a lot of fun in absurdly high numbers, just obscenely high numbers for some of this that are going to be higher than you would ever realistically need in order to succeed. Now, that doesn't mean that these characters always succeed at any task, because say you're really good at Arcana. Well, not every problem you encounter is going to be able to be solved with Arcana or Stealth or athletics or whatever it is that you're good at. And so that's one way in which the game balances itself. And the other way is that if you're really good at stealth, there's no guarantee that that clunky person next to you wearing plate armor that gives them disadvantage on their stealth rolls is going to be good at stealth. So while you might succeed and might succeed wildly, you as a party might not be able to succeed all the time. And so it becomes another type of problem solving. So I don't think that these absurdly high numbers imbalance anything. In fact, I think that people who are doing that are probably missing out on things that would make the party as a whole a little bit stronger. But I would never discourage anyone from doing this because, again, I think it's obscenely fun to have some of these really high, goofy numbers. And I've been talking a lot about skill ability checks because that's usually where you see this happen, where somebody can tease their abilities and their stats and their bonuses to the point where, like if you're a rogue or a ranger, you can get your stealth to the point where you're never going to fail a stealth check. It might be true of some other classes too. Dex-based characters have an easier time with this. So maybe a bard, maybe a monk. You can get your stealth really, really high. And it's true across the board for not necessarily that particular skill, but every class has something that they can sort of tease to a really, really high number. But I do want to give you at least one example of something that isn't an ability check. And I'm going to talk about one of my own characters for this. So I had, and I've talked about this character a couple times on the channel now, a ranger who was an Aarakocra. And so Aarakocra can fly, and so as a base ability, my character could fly, which made them very quick. And if you dash, you're going to be even faster. And then one of my companions, one of my adventuring companions, and another PC got the haste spell and was very fond of casting it on me, which doubles your speed and allows you to take another, use your action to dash, and it gives you another action. And so at one point we were in a group chat, like a Facebook group chat or a Discord group chat, I forget which one, and we were all discussing some of these absurdities, and we got to talking about just how fast we could make my character if we stacked all of our buffs and spells, and if I was using every conceivable action and bonus action and ability to dash and double dash, how fast could we get my character? And I wish I saved that conversation. I couldn't find it for this video, but it was hundreds of feet per round for at least one round. So it wasn't about how long we could sustain it, because there were certain abilities that allowed you to do things, but it was only for one round. So we figured out that it was somewhere north of 400 feet in a single round that we could get my character. And then we worked that out to how many miles per hour or kilometers per hour that equated to. And so my character was basically the speed demon who could fly all around the battlefield. Now, this is also a great example because I never really used that in the campaign. There were a couple moments where I swooped in and out really quickly to do something, but I never needed more than about 50 to 80 feet of movement to do it. I certainly didn't need 100 or 200 or 300 feet of movement in a round. And so there was never a purpose to this, but the fun was in figuring out how we could do it and stacking those buffs and spells up to the point where I could move that much. So oftentimes if I was hasted or something, I would just say to the DM, okay, I'm going to move here, then move here, then move here, then take my first action, and then move here, take my second action. I was just having fun with it, and it didn't break anything in the campaign. Nobody minded. Everyone thought it was kind of funny, and indeed, the other players were actually helping me create this absurdity, so it was fun for the whole group. And it never really had any mechanical purpose in the campaign. I'm sure you could find instances where it would be useful to be able to move 200 or 300 feet in a single round in a campaign. We happened to not be able to find one of those instances, but that wasn't the point. The point was the absurdity. And I think there is value in that, and I think that D&D has a lot of value in that particular realm because it's so good at creating absurd situations and absurd moments. So if this video has a point, my advice to you is look for situations where you can do this with your characters, where you can have some sort of weird, goofy, unique, specialized fun with your character that you wouldn't be able to experience with another class or another archetype or another group composition. And I think if you find these things, you're going to find what's unique about your character, and you're going to have a lot of fun, looking for instances to use it or at least talk about it in the game. But whatever your absurd goals are, if you have a wonderful story about rolling a 60 on a stealth roll or an arcana check or something else, who knows what it could be, I would love to hear about it. I think that would be completely badass. So let me know if you're listening to this and you have a story of the absurd. Let me know either down in the comments here on YouTube, or you can always find me on Twitter at BT Dungeons. I've got a website where you can find me as well, so I hope you subscribe and check all those things out, and I hope you meet all your absurd goals, not just in D&D, but in life. And until next time, take care. Oh my freaking god. Okay, so the reason I have this bear as my background, I forgot entirely. I was going to lead with a story about a bear. There's a famous D&D story that floats around the internet. I think it's from, God, I want to say it's like 4th edition. Maybe that's wrong. But it's someone who was playing a PC who was a bear. This must have been a very forgiving DM who allowed players to do whatever they wanted. And they specialized so much into bluff. Was bluff a stat? I didn't really play much 4th edition. Was bluff a stat in there? Maybe it was even a different system. In any case, like deception or bluff. So maxed out their deception as a bear so that they would deceive everyone to think that they were a human or a humanoid. And they went a whole campaign as Sir Barrington. So if you look up Sir Barrington, you'll find this whole story. It's funnier than I'm going to tell it. But basically, it was a case of somebody taking this idea and just making a whole character concept around something that was about rolling absurdly high numbers in a single stat. And it's stories like those. Whether or not Sir Barrington is a true story, it doesn't matter because, one, it's hilarious, and two, things like that are possible in D&D, even if that particular one is one that your DM might not let you get away with. Playing a bear and just convincing everyone that you're not a bear, which, I mean, just thinking about that sounds like the funniest. That sounds like the funniest. So yeah, in the Sir Barrington story, if you don't want to look it up, basically, eventually one person at a dinner party makes the roll, like meets the check for his deception, and realizes that it's a bear, and he stands up and he's like, "That's not a nobleman, that's a bear!" And everyone else thinks he's insane because they all know that it's just Sir Barrington. And so they take this other guy away in chains or just kick him out or whatever. And Sir Barrington is just like, "Rrr," and just shrugs like, who knows what's up with that guy. So when I first read that story, I think I was in tears. And it's a great example of a D&D story. Great example of a D&D story. So I wanted to lead with that, and I might still, but I think it's funnier that I forgot about it, so it's here in the tag for the video, so I think I'm going to end with it, and just have people who didn't make it this far wonder why in the world there's a bear in my background. Oh, it's a good thing I don't do this professionally.